What's up, guys? This is Jan for Chess24. We keep covering the Candidates Tournament in Moscow. In this video, we will have a look at the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Vishy Anand, played in round number 12, the anti-penultimate round. Complicated word that I learned, which means there's 3 rounds to go. Let's have a look at the standings before this game. There we see that Vishy Anand is in the lead together with Fabiano Caruana. Caruana holds a tiebreaker, so Vishy would have to score more points than Caruana if he wanted to win the event. Hikaru Nakamura struggling 4.5 out of 11 or -2. So let's see how he fares with the white pieces against Vishy. Nakamura goes for 1c4, very popular move in this tournament, and a line where Vishy's sort of shown his hand. He does stick to the system he's been employing, not only all tournament, but also all the year before that. He goes for e5, this 4 knights, and after g3, the move bishop to b4. Anish Giri simultaneously in the same round played the other main move d5 against Peter Svidler, but Vishy sees no reason to deviate from his bishop b4 system, even though he suffered a painful loss only 2 games earlier against Fabiano Caruana, but clearly he must have fixed what happened there in his homework. Hikaru Nakamura does not play the main line here, which is bishop g2, castles, castles. We've seen plenty of this, including the game Caruana against Anand, bishop c3, bc, e4. Sorry, the move order is wrong, but the position is right. Knight g5, rook e8, and so on and so forth. Instead, Nakamura has prepared his own way, the move knight to d5. After knight d5, the principal move is to play e4, strike back in the center. It's not forced. You could play a more solid move like bishop c5, d3, h6 to stop bishop g5 with much quieter play. But e4 is the principled attempt to exploit this early knight jump because the white knight doesn't have a convenient square to go to. It can't go to g5, and it doesn't really want to go to g1 if white took on b4. This has been played in some games, but after knight takes b4, let's say knight to d4, black is very fast, opening up the center with c5 and d5, and not supposed to have any problems here. Therefore, after e4, the critical move is the move knight to h4, knight on the rim is dim, and indeed, there's gonna be topics surrounding g5 in the near future, once his knight does not have access to the f5 square anymore. On the plus side, this pawn on e4 could become a little weak. Of course, all of this is theory. Nakamura clearly expected this line, prepared it for his game against Vishy. Short castle is the main move, bishop to g2, introducing ideas of knight takes f6, followed by bishop takes e4, even though this is sort of a hot pawn to take. This position we've already seen in the tournament in a game between Veselin Topalov and Levan Aronian, and Vishy decides to play the same way Aronian played in this game. He goes for the move d6. The main move, theoretically, in this position is the move rook to e8, covering the e4 pawn and vacating the way back for the black bishop. But apparently Anand liked the way Aronian handled this position and plays the move d6. In that game against Topalov, Topalov took on b4, and after knight takes b4, a3, knight c6, Aronian didn't run into any particular problems. But Nakamura has prepared his own way. He goes for the move a3. To show the point of a3, let's show another line that is known to theory here. It's the move short castles. Now, as I mentioned, black has the option of going g5, trapping this knight on the rim. Theory continues with the move d4 here, intending to put the bishop on g5. If g takes h4, bishop g5 would be sort of decisive, winning for white, because you can't step out of this pin. But instead, black goes h6, reopening the threat of gh4, now that there's no longer bishop g5. This position is a mess, but according to my knowledge, it's completely fine for black. Therefore, Nakamura goes his own way, and he starts with a3, forcing his bishop to go to c5. Bishop a5 doesn't make a lot of sense because of b4, and now he castles. This is already a very rare position, and the idea is seen after the move g5, when white goes d4 with tempo, when not only is this bishop on crease, but this bishop is still threatening to go to g5, and white is more or less winning here. For example, knight takes d5, d takes c5, and this knight doesn't have a good square to go to, while keeping g5 protected. So g5 would be a mistake, therefore Anand plays the move rook to e8, covering the e4 pawn, and still thinking about this, I'm sure. Nakamura sort of provokes him to do it by playing the move e3. This is the best move according to the computers, but you have to know how you react to g5. e3 prepares the expansion b4. White would very much like to play b4, but if he does it instantly, this bishop gets access to this very nice d4 square. Therefore, e3 to occupy that square first. Now, black has to decide what to do. The logical move is g5, attacking the knight, and that's what Anand does. Of course, it is a scary move to play if you kind of know you're playing against your opponent's home preparation, and he certainly looked at this. But Vichy has always been a principal player in the opening, wants to see what white has. If you don't trust the position after g5, there are alternatives. You can play the move a5, fighting against b4, when white is arguably slightly better after maybe f3, with a very complicated position. But black would be under some pressure. Another move is the move bishop e6. Well, once again, white is a little better, but the game is just starting. b4, bishop b6, with a complicated position after queen to b3. However, let's go to the game where g5 did happen, and let's see what Nakamura's idea was. His idea is to play the move b4 as he prepared with e3, targeting this bishop. Now, the natural move is a move played in the game, the move bishop to b6, still intending to win a piece by grabbing the h4 knight. There's an alternative, which is taking here immediately, after which the position is not so clear. The natural move is, of course, to take the bishop, but then after d takes c, in spite of black's ruined king's position, he's not in such bad shape because he's going to undermine this knight in the center, and the position gets very, very unclear. So if bc5, there's also the more cunning bishop to b2, attacking f6 and saying the piece does not run away, which looks very nice for white at first sight. I'm not surprised that Anand avoided this, but it turns out this position is not so clear either. Black takes on d5 and then goes knight to e5. Now if white finally takes his piece back, black goes bishop to g4 with tempo, then wants to create some play on the weakened light squares around the white king. For example, queen to c2, knight to f3 check, and the position is very, very messy. I'm not sure who's better here and why. So this was admittedly not very human alternative to the move bishop b6, which looks natural, but it turns out that after the equally natural bishop to b2, black has some tough questions to answer. Knight takes f6 is a massive threat. The only playable move is knight takes d5, and after c takes d5, while this knight is still trapped, black hasn't found time to take it yet, and once again he's busy with his own knight being under attack. If this knight retreats, let's say to b8, then you win the piece, but you're not going to enjoy it very much because white decides this game with a direct attack now. Queen h5, gh4, queen h6, threatening checkmate, f6, bishop takes f6, queen d7, queen g5 check, forcing this king into the wild, and king f7 would be mate in 1, so you have to go king f8, but the game won't last much longer after f3 when the rook joins the attack via the f-file, and it's game over. So you cannot do that. Similar fate awaits black after the move knight to e7, when the most violent way to conduct the attack is bishop f6, gh4, queen h5, and the dual threat of queen h6 and queen g5 is gonna cost black lots of material. This is pretty much resigns too. It's also bishop takes e4, in case you're wondering about queen d7 or something. Can't defend this. Actually, let me put it on the board. Queen d7, check, knight g6, queen h6, checkmate. So neither of these moves work. That leaves us with the most natural move, knight to e5. That also has a drawback because it runs into f2, f4. White is using tactics to, first of all, try to open this diagonal, but also to save his knight on h4. If black captures either pawn, ef3 or gf4, white is just much better because the knight gets saved. So the critical move appears to be knight to d3. But once again, the weakened black king side tells fg5, knight takes b2, queen to h5, and white does win with yet another direct attack. For example, queen e7, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4, queen takes f7 check, king h8, and the finishing blow g6, threatening g7 mate and queen h7 mate. There is no defense. So all these lines are very scary for completeness sake, I should mention arguably the best defense for black here. Knight e4, f4, knight c4 is a bit better. The point being that after fg5, you don't take on b2, but you recapture on g5. This position is not over yet, but with a weakened black king, I don't believe in black's chances here at all either. After bishop f6, queen takes d5. At least there's no direct mate, the queen doesn't come here, but this position looks horrible for black too. Quiet move like king h1 is the machine suggestion, and black is suffering too. So Anand clearly calculated these lines, didn't like either of them, and he decided to return the piece, or to use this piece to block this diagonal. He employed a similar defensive tactic against Fabiano Caruana. For those of you who remember the game, he went knight f5 there to block the f-file, also sacrificing a whole piece. And his idea is, if white were to take on d4, bishop takes d4, e takes d4, the white pawn structure does not look so pretty. After g takes h4, probably white is still a bit better because his king is so weak, but this position is highly complex and black would be very much in the game. However, there is a much stronger move, and Nakamura, who was out of book here, to his credit, found this move after some calculation, came up with the move d2 to d3. Quiet move, but opening the position and putting black under a lot of pressure. The point is, after the only sensible move, g takes h4, white goes d takes e4, and it turns out this knight is trapped in the middle of the board, but now black does not gain any holes in the white pawn structure as compensation. The knight can't go anywhere. If it went to b5, the only square where it doesn't get trapped, white just goes a4 and it's still trapped, so this is losing. Vichy instead tried knight to e6, trying to at least get a central pawn for his knight. D takes e6 and rook takes e6. The material is still equal, but we see the difference in kings really tells here, and the difference in dark squared bishops. This bishop on b2 is a powerhouse. The bishop on b6 is pretty much a spectator staring at the e3 pawn. In case you're wondering why he didn't play the more natural bishop takes e6, that allows queen to h5, and the threat of queen h6 is once again lethal. So rook takes e6 was a bad shot to cover that square, but the black position is pretty much beyond repair here. Nakamura goes for the most forcing line, e5, trying to open up his other bishop as well. This wasn't forced. To me, the plan with queen to d3, intending f4, f5 and rook to f4, looks equally strong. Terrible, terrible position for black. But nothing wrong with e5, opening the position even further. Anand tries hg, hg and queen to g5, at least covering the g4 square, trying to stop the white queen from activating. Many ways here, but Nakamura plays very straightforwardly, goes e d6, reopens his bishop's diagonal, rook takes d6 and queen to b3. Queen c2 was equally good. The point is, if this queen gets hit by, let's say, bishop e6, it goes to c3, threatens checkmate on g7 or h8, and black can only buy his way out at the cost of a very important pawn on b7 with hopeless position. Therefore you have to try something else. Arguably the most resilient way to play here was c6, blocking this diagonal, and then queen to c3 is once again strong, threatening checkmate, f6 forced again, and rook to d1, exchanging the defender of this f6 pawn when the game isn't over. But after takes, bishop e6, the minimum white has, probably also the best white has in fairness, but he can just take this pawn and reach an endgame, a pawn up, which would still require some technique to convert, but with the two passed pawns, white should eventually come out on top. Anand wasn't very impressed by this prospect, and therefore he decided to go for some sort of, counterattack desperation. He goes h5. The idea is to put this rook on h6 to cover both the g7 and h8 squares, so he doesn't get mated along the long diagonal after queen c3. Wants to do without f6, but this of course creates further holes around the black king and also doesn't really contribute anything to the black development. While Nakamura plays a very logical move, rook a1 is trying to exchange the one good defender that black has. If rook takes d1, the position is pretty hopeless. Therefore, Vichy puts his rook on h6. He's dreaming of some counterattack with h4, but he does not arrive in time because he's vacated the center. He hasn't played c6. So the d5 square is available. Nakamura uses it to activate to the max. Rook to d5, hitting the queen. The queen goes forward. There is a quick checkmate coming up after rook d8 check. So it has to retreat, queen e7. And another very strong move by Nakamura, the move queen to c4. Note how he's activating all his pieces to the maximum. The queen on c4 wants to go to f4, attacking this rook, coming within dangerous vicinity of the black king. And there is absolutely nothing black can do here. The difference in king safety and piece activity is just way too big. Anand tried to move bishop g4. Had he played bishop e6, would run into the same end. Queen f4, bishop d5, queen h6. Double attack. Game over. Therefore bishop to g4. Same move, queen f4, rook to g6. What are you going to do? Trying to stick around. There's many ways leading to Rome here. Bishop e4 was a good move, attacking this rook to meet f5 with rook takes f5. And white crashes through. For example, bishop f5, queen f5, rook g4, bishop d5 check. And we can see the two bishops in full effect, checkmating the king. Nakamura played an even stronger move, if that's possible. He goes for the move rook e5, asking this queen where it intends to go and preparing bishop to e4. Black goes queen d6, nothing else helps at all either. And now bishop e4, overstretching the black defenses beyond repair. If this rook moves, there would be the cute tactic rook to g5. Same move that saved Nakamura in yesterday's game against Giri, by the way, rook g5. And it's going to be checkmate very soon. Queen f4, there is a little Zwischenschach, rook g7, winning a rook, where rook takes g5, queen takes g5, king f8, bishop e5, amongst other things, is also not going to last very long. Therefore, Vishy Anand had seen enough after the move bishop e4, decided to resign. Nothing saves him. f5, bishop f5 is also a disaster. And a quick victory for Hikaru Nakamura. Very, frustrating game for Vishy Anand and his supporters. Look, it's like we have two Vishys in this tournament. There's white Vishy, who's won 4 games, lost 0 games, +4. And then there's black Vishy, who has not won a game, lost 3 games on -3. I believe the main reason for this defeat was, homework. Maybe Vishy, it's easy to say with hindsight, but maybe he stuck too stubbornly to the system that everyone knew he was playing with bishop b4. Now he's been killed out of the opening twice in a row by both Caruana and Nakamura in this position. And if you run into a fresh position like this after bishop g2, d6, a3 castles, to play the move g5, here, is very, very committal, and it did not go well for Anand. Chess-wise, probably the best chance after g5, b4 was to play his move g takes h4, which could still be unclear, but a very hard move to find over the board. The idea you have is bishop b6, but after bishop b6, bishop b2, the black position is already beyond repair. So tough loss for Vishy Anand. Let's look at the standings after this round. If you don't want to see them, then switch off the video now. These are still the standings before the round. After the round, we get them here. And we see that Sergei Karjakin is back in the lead. He won a nice but sort of easy game against Veselin Topalov, who was not very up-to-date in his Knight of Sicilian. Well, the 2 other games ended in draws. That means, Fabian Caruana, after a very sharp game against Levan Aronian, remains tight with Karjakin in the lead. Karjakin holds the tiebreaker. Therefore, Caruana has to outscore Karjakin to win this event. Vishy Anand, of course, a setback, is now half a point behind the leaders, still in it with a chance. And then we have 3 guys on 50%, who theoretically, if they won their last 2 games, could still join the battle for first place. But the most likely scenario is that the tournament will be decided between Karjakin, Caruana and Vishy Anand. 2 games to go. Thank you for watching this video. It's gonna stay exciting, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.